Well, good morning or good afternoon to everyone, depending on what part of the country you are calling in from. My name is Ginger Bell, and I would like to welcome you to the last in our series on becoming independent. And I say last in our series, it really isn't last in our series. We started the series out just to be able to answer questions. We were getting so many people across the country that were wanting to find out how to step out, open their own mortgage origination shop. And many in the industry were coming to the realization and continue to come to the realization, as I'm seeing a lot of your questions and comments and emails, and thank you for that, that there are so many advantages to becoming an independent mortgage broker, a non-delegated correspondent. That's really why we created the series, was to be able to answer questions that many are having about what's the difference between being broker and a non-delegated? What's the licensing requirements? What are the compliance needs? What marketing platforms are available? And so personally, I was getting many calls and emails weekly wanting to know, okay, how do I get started? Where do I, go? And so that's why we started the series. We've covered a lot in the series. This is the 5th in our series. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to wrap everything up for you. So we're going to do a highlight as far as talking about everything we went through. I have a lot of resources for you. You actually will be able to access today's slide deck. I just posted it there. I'm going to send you a follow-up email as well. And then you can access all of the handouts, all of the recordings to all of the sessions at Mortgage Toolkits. That's plural, so toolkits with an S, and register there. And then you can get everything. I've loaded everything in there, all the recordings, all the slide decks, all the handouts. Everything's in there except for today's recording. It'll be there soon, but I'm recording it right now. And so any additional questions you have too, let us know. You can shoot me an email. All my information is in there. I just went through a list of some of the questions that you submitted for this webinar. So I'm going to address some of those in just a little bit, because it's actually questions leading into our next series, and that's really what I'm going to be developing for you next. But before we begin, I want to make sure that you all know you can listen, you can call in, you can listen on a computer, you can call in, you can ask questions, and you can do that. I saw someone raise their hand. Actually, if you can type in your question for me that you have, that would be great. 2 different places you can do it. You can type in a question either in the chat box or in the Q&A box. And let's just go ahead and test and make sure that you know how to ask questions and that you all can hear me, and it's not just me having a conversation here on my computer by myself. So let me know where you're calling in from. I always love hearing how the weather is. I am in Portland, Oregon, and it is absolutely gorgeous weather. I love this time of the year in Oregon. One of the most beautiful places you can be is in Portland, Oregon in the summertime. Yes, I do clarify there. So if you all can type in there in the Q&A or in the panel session and let me know that you can hear me, that would be great. I'm not seeing anything in there yet. Oh, there you go. Oh, thank you, John. What are you doing in California? You're also a Portland boy. And Nashville. One of the places I have not been yet is Nashville. I want to get there. Okay, so thank you all for doing that. That way I know that you can hear me. I'm not having a conversation with myself. So again, we want to welcome you to the Becoming Independent series, and that's what we've called it. Our goal for this entire series was to provide you with information, resources, and experts regarding becoming an independent originator to help you determine if this is a viable option for you now or in the future, and then answer your questions and provide you with steps and the resources and all the things that you need along the way. And so that's what we've done through the series. We're going to continue to do that. And you can access what we have right now at Mortgage Toolkits, that's with an S.com. So you can go there, register, just fill out your information. It just goes to me. It doesn't go to anybody else. So it's just going to Ginger Bell. But that way you can, collect all the information, and if you have questions, you can let me know about that as well. So some of the questions that you submitted for this session was, you want to know, first question was marketing on a budget. Second was hiring LOs. And the third is maintaining a consistent flow. And it's interesting that those questions were asked, and because it's really the next step. So I wasn't going to do another webinar until the fall, but I have a friend of mine who I'm working with who has a coaching program that she started for new LOs, and I've got some new LOs that are going through it, and she's had great success with it. So I said, you know what, Andrea, can you do me a favor and hop on a webinar? And so we're going to do a webinar, 2 weeks, June 14th, and it's going to be 5 steps to building a mortgage sales team. So if you are wondering about hiring LOs, we're going to be telling you how to do that, but really building new LOs, because that's what we need to look at for our next phase, and it's a good opportunity, obviously, for independent originators to do that. So you can register at independentoriginator.com and register for that June 14th. And then marketing on a budget, I'm also during that webinar going to share some information about marketing on a budget with a couple of different platforms that I use. So we will talk about those things: marketing on a budget, hiring LOs, coaching LOs, and maintaining consistent flow. So that's going to be our next in our series of independent originators. So when we began our series, we talked about the history and kind of what happened and what led to where we are today. Obviously, for most of us in the industry, we know what happened 2008, 2009, 2010 with the mortgage meltdown. We had a lot of regulatory changes. We've seen some of those kind of going through some rollbacks. We've had the most recent legislation that was signed by President and that was signed a couple weeks ago by President Trump. And so we're going to see some of the changes that we had made changed again. But because of these changes, it created a change to different business channels. And so many exited the broker channel and went to alternative channels: banks and credit unions, retail origination, net branches. I can tell you one of the things that came out of the recent legislation is a change in an interim licensing period. That's one of the challenges we have for our LOs that went to the banks and the credit unions, is they have to go from registered to being state licensed before they can start originating. And we now have a transitional time period that they can still originate while they're passing their test and getting state licensed. And so that's not in effect yet. I'll have some information. It's probably a webinar I'm going to have out in a little bit on that. So we'll let you know on that, but a good opportunity for recruiting there. So something to think about, but that's really the history as far as what happened. What we're seeing now in our current trend is we're seeing a lot of independent originators re-entering the market. And we're seeing an increase in number in broker and non-delegated correspondent channels. And I mean a huge number. So many of my clients serve the broker and non-del channel, and it's phenomenal and exciting. It's so exciting to see that entrepreneurship coming back to our industry, because that's really the benefit of being a broker or a non-delegated, is really being that entrepreneur. The reason why is because our industry's figured out some of the outsourcing that you need, whether it's compliance, whether it's marketing, whether it's fulfillment. We've had time to be able to put a lot of these pieces together, and I've been fortunate to be involved with creating some of those. And so that's what we've put together as far as the resources, and a lot of what you've seen throughout the sessions that we've been doing. So why now? Why are we seeing this right now, that people are coming back into the industry and want to be independent? Well, one thing is we have resources that are available for outsourcing, and wholesale pricing it says often better. I tell you what, guys, it's like 99% of the time better. And it's funny, I was talking to a mortgage coach who I was referring to someone. They wanted some additional coaching. And so I was talking to her last week, and we were talking about who this client was, and she said, selling price and overcoming that pricing objection, and she said, how are they structured? And I said, well, they're a broker. And she goes, oh, and I quote on this, and this individual actually works for a retail organization, which is funny. But she said, oh, as a broker, they're going to crush it. Their pricing is always better. And I was just like, okay, then why aren't you a broker? And she's actually told me she's considering becoming a broker and she needs to set it up and all that. So, anyway, pricing's better. Also, getting control back and wanting control over that branding to be able to do that. Being able to talk to an underwriter, being able to have some control over things. That is why we are seeing so many coming back into becoming independents. The reason I started this series is I was getting a ton of calls from friends in the industry and referrals wanting to get started. And honestly, some I've talked to have said that they figured out they probably spent a couple $100,000 in corporate allocations as a part of their net branch in the year. So it's like, okay, you're spending that much money and you're not controlling your pricing. And same thing, wholesale pricing is better. They're having to compete with brokers. So all of that is making a lot of sense as to why we are seeing this right now. You have a couple of choices. We talked about these in our first session. And your independent originator choices are mortgage broker and non-delegated correspondent, and a combination of both. So you can do both. Obviously, as a non-delegated, you're going to be doing both because of your FHA under your delegated. And you can do that. You can start out as a mortgage broker, and then you can move into becoming a non-del. We're seeing most retail operators who are leaving retail and starting their own shop becoming non-del because they have the net worth, and that's all available to them. So in the session, and you'll hear this in the recordings if you didn't attend our first session, we talked about what those requirements are. And you need to look at that as far as your licensing and your state and all of that. So if you do have questions on that, by all means, let me know and I can point you in the right direction. In our second series, we talked about franchising. And we had Ward Morrison, president of Motto Mortgage, on. And Motto is the first mortgage franchise. And, for me, looking at franchising, because 30 years ago, I owned several Subway franchises. And so when Motto came and said they were starting a franchise, like, that's brilliant. Really, think about it, it's brilliant. And they offer everything as far as the assistance with the setup. They provide resources for compliance, technology. They have a community. They give you a website. They give you branding, marketing, training, and you have all the benefits of your loan program options. So, if you're saying, hey, I want to start this, but I don't want to have to figure everything out. And for me, that's why we bought a Subway franchise, is because I could have opened Ginger's sandwich shop, but first of all, nobody would have known who it was. And second of all, I would have had to figure everything out. So for me, a Subway made sense because it was already there. And I tell you what made a lot of sense is when I sold it, because the name definitely helped. So, if you're looking at getting out there and wanting to start something, this may be an alternative for you with Motto Mortgage because they give you all of that. And I say this not just because they're a client of mine and I do all their onboarding training for them every month in Denver with our new franchisees, but the resources, it's just phenomenal what they provide. So, if you're thinking about getting started, I would definitely look at Motto as a good alternative of putting everything together for you. We talked about benefits. So what are the benefits of becoming independent? And obviously, it's control. It's having control over what's happening. Why? Well, as an independent, you're working with a variety of wholesale lenders, and you don't have a ton of them you're working with. You're going to have a few that you're going to work with. We have the best, in my opinion, here that have partnered with us. But they're working for your business. And so it's not like having to fight with someone to be able to talk to someone. These are companies that want your business, that want to help you build your business. And so it gives you that control back. It gives you branding. You can control your timing. You can control your compensation. You can control your servicing, the volume, your pricing, your product selection. All of those things you get back. And so that's, again, why we're seeing so many retail originators saying, hey, I'm going back. I'm starting my own business. So we started out, and this is a handout that you'll see that we'll give you at Mortgage Toolkits. And we talked about licensing and some of the challenges that you have with licensing. I started out with the steps when I outlined them with licensing because that can take the longest, and depending on what is needed in your state, you may need to do some things in order to get the process started. So I always start out with licensing. We put together a lot of resources for you that honestly, I created a full, I think it's like 36 pages. It's a lot of information, but links, click here. This is where you get started. Or you can outsource it. And that's one thing you can do as well. But you want to make sure that you review what's needed up front for the surety bond, and that's different per state, your criminal background checks, your education, experience, and exams. That's one of the things that I'm going to share with you on our next webinar on the 14th is how to help your LOs getting through some of those exams as well. So all these things you need to look at as you're getting started. And so I always say this is the first place to start, is get started with your licensing. And then another big focus we had was on your compliance management system. And I've been talking about compliance management systems ever since the CFPB came out with their examination guide in 2013. Because it is an area that's very important for you as an independent. And it's something that you want to set up correctly the first time when you first get established, because it is something that we are seeing state examiners looking at. So it's not just the CFPB that requires this. It's a lot of states that are requiring this now as well. And so it's also that's just part of conducting business. And so if you're going to do it, you want to make sure that you're setting it up right. One of the questions we had was maintaining a consistent flow. And that's one of the things I always talk about in our training for model franchisees every month is pipeline management. And how do you create a process in order to help your LOs manage their pipeline and stay on top of things? And I like using what I call a set it and forget it system. And that's important to be able to establish those. And that's combined in with your compliance management system. So how are you establishing responsibilities? How are you communicating those responsibilities? How are you ensuring that those responsibilities are incorporated into your organization and carried out? And if they're not carried out, then what corrective action is taken in order to make sure that that's corrected? And that's really what the states are looking for. So you want to make sure that you set that up at the beginning. And that's one of the reasons, quite honestly, why most people left becoming independent by being a broker and went to retail operations is because of this piece. There's so many changes and regulations, and we need compliance, and we need all of this, and we don't know how to do this. And so it made sense at that time to go to a net branch or a retail operation or to go to a bank instead of figuring all of this out. But you know what, guys? We've figured it out. And we've had a lot of time since then. We've had 10 years. It's 2018. And so we have figured this out. We know what this looks like. I was fortunate enough to be able to work with strategic compliance partners in creating what we call real-time compliance, which is compliance for mortgage originators, for independent originators. And it is just that. It's policies and procedures that is made specifically for the mortgage broker, for the non-delegated. That's written to you. So it doesn't have HMDA included. It doesn't have things like your Service Member Civil Relief Act. You know, the things that you don't need to have in your policies and procedures, it doesn't have. But it does have the things you do need. And the things that I love about it is it's kept in real time. And so if there's a regulatory change, guess what? It's updated and it's sent to you. And again, that's one of the reasons why a lot of individuals went to retail operations, is because they didn't want to have to deal with this. But what we've created over the past 10 years are these resources, and resources to where they're very affordable. I mean, we're talking, $300 a month to be able to have all of this, all the training, everything that you need in order to be compliant. One of the things that we talked about, and I get this question all the time, is what's the difference between a QC plan and policies and procedures? Because as you're getting signed up with a lot of your wholesale lenders, they ask for your QC plan. And so that's oftentimes when I'll get an email saying, okay, what is this? What do I need? So there's a difference. Your policy and procedures, two different things. Your policy is telling you what you are going to do. Most of your policies are written around a lot of the regulations. So what are you doing for advertising? What are you doing for RESPA? What are you doing for affiliated business arrangements? What are you doing for your marketing? What are you doing for your BSA, your Bank Secrecy Act? You need to make sure you have AML training. Those are the things your policy is telling you what you're going to do. The procedure is telling you how you're going to do it. So what are you doing to put it into place? And then the QC plan is a procedure, and it will change depending on your business type. But as a broker, your QC plan is how are you making sure that there's quality and control over your process. And so these are written plans. These are things that you need to have, that your policies and procedures you need to have. QC plan is something that oftentimes it's just a very simple direction. The other thing I recommend too is onboarding. What are you doing for your onboarding? What are you doing to make sure that everybody is consistent for your social media? All of those kind of things. Those are things you want to have in place, and those are things that we provide for some of the resources. In our last session, we talked about marketing, social media, and websites. And so when you're looking at becoming independent, obviously these are some resources that you need to pull together. So whether it's beginning with getting licensing, it's getting your operations set up, it's getting your policies and procedures, it's developing a website. And there's a lot of great resources out there to be able to pull all this together for you. So it's simple to create a website. There's some different resources that we've added for you, or you can hire someone, but you don't need to spend a ton of money on a website, but you need to make sure that you at least have something for that. Social media, again, it's something that you need, but it's also something that can be very simple, or you can outsource it. So it's a matter of, there's a lot of easy ways to pull this together. And we talked about some of the things you need for social media, which you can go back and listen to that as well. Also, we talked and Jamie with UWM shared with us how to have your 60, your 90-day plan for marketing to make sure that you're executing it, you're analyzing it, and you are repeating it. And so all of the things that we share throughout the webinar series are available to you, and you can register for those. And what I wanted to do in this session was just a recap, kind of pull everything together. And it's really fast. The reason that we broke it into a series of 5 is because we did have a lot to cover. You cannot cover everything in one session. We also cannot cover everything as far as the next steps in one session. And so I appreciate all the questions that you're sending to me or emails that you're sending me, letting me know what you need next. And so with that, I'm actually going to open up and say, what are you needing next? If you can type in there. From, what we had here was the process of getting started. So once you get started, then what are the things that you want to know about, need to know about, resources you need? Where are your struggles? Where are you getting caught up? Is it in health insurance? Is it in recruiters if you're trying to find new LOs? Is it in marketing? And if you're trying to find a CRM system? So type in there, if you can type in right now, if you have some of those, that would be great. And I can address some of those as we're going along. Let me know what it is you need. And that's really what we want to be able to do, is to provide some of those resources for you for the next step. And I am not seeing you all typing anything in there, so it's like you all must be ready to go. So as you're thinking about, and you know what, here's the thing, I know until you get started, you may not know what it is that you actually need until you get started, and that's okay. So if you come up with them as you go along, my email is on all the follow-up that you're getting from this webinar. And so you can always just respond to me. I'm also on Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn. And let me know what it is. And Scott's sending out, the best CRM I found is Less Annoying CRM. That's a good one. I'll have to check it out. That's a good one. I actually use Infusionsoft, and I'm a certified Infusionsoft provider, so that's another great one too. But it's always good to have those, and resources like that are great. Those are the kind of things, and Scott, I'm going to grab that from you and find out some more information, so I do appreciate that. Because we are creating, one of the things I'm creating, which should be available hopefully by the fall, is we're creating a resource of vendors and service providers in the mortgage industry. We're calling it the Mortgage List, and so our goal is to have that available. But creating those kind of resources are good for you as well. So what I've seen so far from questions are marketing on a budget. Scott has a great recommendation. I'm going to cover some of that in our next webinar. And then hiring LOs, maintaining consistent flow. And so I'm seeing a question. We need help setting up the administration part of Encompass. It's kind of overwhelming. You know what, David, thank you for that. And that's not the first time I've heard that. So it's the admin part of Encompass. Let me see what I can find out for you, because that is good to know. So it's actually setting it up. Okay. Good to add to the list. So keep typing them in there. While you're typing them in there, and we may not get to all of them now, I do want to thank our partners, because in creating this entire series, it's not something that I could do completely on my own. Trust me, I've worked through a lot of these. I've always worked with mortgage brokers and non-delegated correspondent lenders. I've always worked on the wholesale side, and I've always worked in creating a lot of resources, training, education, marketing for independents. So I know enough to be dangerous, but I don't know all of it. And so I want to thank our partners for putting so much information together and helping to be able to put this through. Starting with, if you're looking for mortgage licensing, we have Integrity Mortgage Licensing, and their information is available, and Stephen did a great job as far as sharing information on what you need to get started in the licensing process. We want to thank Motto Mortgage, and again, great opportunity if you're looking for getting started and you don't want to do it all. Motto Mortgage franchise is great. And I can tell you from a franchise side, what they give you is phenomenal for what it costs you. So if you haven't looked into it yet, I would really recommend that. I also want to thank Strategic Compliance Partners, who provides real-time compliance. As I said, I was involved in creating this with SCP back in 2013, 2014, and it is a fantastic offering. It is $299 one-time setup fee, $275 a month, and then $15 for each user that you have. It gives you your online compliance training, your federal and state, one state policy guides, as well as access to a compliance coach for consulting, which that was one of the things that we put in there because there's so many times you need to, I called it phone a friend. It's like, I have a compliance question. Who do I call? So this gives all of that into one. And yes, so any attorneys regarding LO Comp? Yes, I do have great attorneys regarding LO Comp. I will make sure and include that in follow-up as well, because that is something else to consider. And we didn't even get into that as far as the setup. That's really the next phase, David, so good segue. As far as, okay, you're set up now, what are the things you need to think about? And that is LO Comp. One of the things, if you go to Mortgage Broker Toolkit, I do have an attorney in there who can also help you as far as getting your business set up. So I'll make sure and add your LO Comp attorney in there as well. Philip Filisana at Focus Fulfillment, one of my favorite people who provides fulfillment services for a non-delegated correspondent. And really, this is, again, another outsourced compliance. So if you're becoming an NDC, you don't have to hire someone to be able to do those closing docs for you, to prepare and order that wire and take care of your post-closing. Focus Fulfillment is a great resource for that as well. And then Steve Parnell gave us information on websites and marketing, another great resource and someone who is very passionate about helping mortgage brokers to get started. So Stephen did a fantastic job in sharing information, and this guy is absolutely brilliant. The things that he talks about, and it's way above my pay grade when he gets into SEO and lead gen and all the things you can do on Google. And it's like, you know what? I have no idea what he's talking about. I just know he does produce a lot of results. And so absolutely phenomenal resource to be able to help you out with that. FirstFunding, your only choice as far as warehouse lending for warehouse facilities, did a great job providing us with information regarding becoming a non-delegated correspondent. And a company that is so committed to the non-delegated correspondent channel provides so much as far as resources and education and technology, and so just a great partner. And I want to thank them for their expertise, and we'll continue to do items with them as well. And then our wholesale lenders who provided so many resources. Finance of America provided information for several of our webinars. They also provided us with our marketing graphics and support and marketing and so much. Truly appreciate all that they do. Garrett Griffin, who's their national NDC sales manager, absolutely. He's the godfather of NDC. I mean, the guy is just sit down and have a conversation with him. It's absolutely phenomenal and so committed again to the success of independence. So thank you to Finance of America. Thank you to Plaza Home Mortgage for sharing their expertise as well. Another great wholesale lender to be able to work with as far as independent. And then United Wholesale Mortgage, want to thank them for their support, their expertise, and providing resources as well. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. If you do have additional questions, please let us know. You can register for the next in our series, which is June 14th, and it's 5 steps to building a mortgage sales team. And we're going to talk about hiring LOs, training those new LOs, getting them started, getting them over the call reluctance. How do you maintain that consistent flow, and then how to start building some of that marketing on a budget. So I want to thank all of you for joining us throughout the series. How many of you were on for all 5 series? Type in there, I did it. Maybe I'll send you a special thing. Actually, let me see. How many? Type in there right now. I want to see who actually attended all of them. Melissa, you did it. Congratulations. Troy, you got 4. Scott, you got 4. Okay. Who else? How many else besides Melissa got through all 5 of them? Okay. Well, I tell you what, to Melissa, to Troy, and to Scott, shoot me an email. My email address is ginger@go2training.com, and you'll get it on the follow-up that I'm going to send you to, but I'll type it in here real quick. I can never type and talk at the same time. It is one of those things that is just so challenging for me. Okay, I just put it in there. So, I'm going to write your names down. Oh, okay. Dennis, you did all 5. Congratulations. Okay, so we had Dennis and John did all 5. And Melissa, you did all 5. And then Scott. Okay, so Melissa and Scott. And Scott and Dennis and John. Okay, you guys shoot me an email. For those of you who did all 5, I will send to you a copy of my book. I have a book out with Brian Tracy called Success Today. So I'm going to send that to you, and I've got another book coming out with Jack Canfield, which probably is not going to be out for another 2 or 3 months. I've got one coming out, and then he just emailed me yesterday. I've got another chapter that I wrote 3 years ago that he wants to include in a book. But you get registered. I tell you what, for the first, I'm going to do a challenge down here. The first 5 people that register for our webinar that's coming up on June 15th, I'm going to put you on a list to send you my new book with Jack Canfield. But for those of you who attended, the 4 out of the 5, Dennis, John, Melissa, Scott, and did I have 2 Johns? I have John. Oh, Troy. I'm going to send you my book. And I want to thank all of you so much in joining. I absolutely appreciate all that you do, and being able to create home ownership for individuals. It's very important, and in becoming independent. So I want to applaud you. I want to thank you, and let me know what other resources we can provide for you. And I want to thank all of our partners again for making this happen, and I will see all of you on a webinar coming up very soon. So thanks again, and we will see you all soon.